Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with a little more discernment. Today we are diving back into the Archaix Chronicon. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points brought to light by the text. It is not the format for everyone, but it is some people find value in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue the exploration. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above, in the box down below, along with the original source material, so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. If you find value, I ask that you do all of the wonderful things down below. Give me a like, share, follow, throw me a comment. Whether you agree or disagree with anything that is stated, put it in the box down below. And if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. I will make a note that the Archaix disagreements have been remarkably respectful. That is not something that normally happens. Good on you, right? We don't have to agree, but we can be respectful to one another. Um, if you truly find value, I ask that you hit me with that super thanks. Consider joining for a membership or picking up a copy of any of my books. The first one, A Series of Unconventional Beliefs, outlines the procedure by which I learned how to control the Holy Spirit and how you can too if you take the right steps. The second one, The Green Stone, is my completion of Carl Jung's Mysterium Conjunctionis, the work with the spiritual alchemy. I have a key that he was missing, and I feel like I have completed his work with the archetypes as well. And then the third one is A House Built Upon Shifting Sands. It will be probably the most relevant to today because it is a biblical deconstruction of the Bible, using the Bible as the source to deconstruct the Bible. All of these books are available for purchase in the links provided down below, as well as for free. You can listen to me read them to you in the same manner that we do here, sometimes with discussion, so that you can understand exactly what my positions are without having to pay any money. All of them are available. The playlists are linked above and below. With all of that being said, we are going to dive in and continue. Before we begin, right, I just talked about the comments. It has been remarkably respectful. The most common thing is, why don't you go on Jason's channel and argue him in person? First off, I don't know his arguments, right? This what we're doing here. I've been watching Jason for a while, but I haven't had any veracity from the things that he said, right? I'm like, and I had never dove into the Chronicon and read it for myself. And my genuine hope here is that there is the supporting evidence that would lead to this conclusion. That has not been my understanding so far, but I do not automatically judge that that is not a possibility. I mean, I am willing to have my viewpoint changed. You just got to have more than I think it's this way, or I read it in this book that is remarkably unreliable. Uh, if there is solid evidence that something is different than my understanding, I have no problem changing it. But I am not here to chase after Jason. Like I said in the last video, I tag him because that is the honorable thing to do. I'm not here to wait until he goes live and then see if I can find a spot on his live channel. Right? That's not what I'm doing here. Right? We are looking for the truth no matter where it comes from. And honestly, it is easier for me to do if I don't have a personal relationship with the person who is doing this. So even if I was going to seek out his channel, it would not be until I am done with the exploration of the Chronicon. I want to know what his viewpoint is. I want to know where he stands on these things. That's why we're reading his viewpoint and where he stands. I want to get to the truth in as unbiased of a way as possible. It may not seem like I am being unbiased over here. I really am, right? I do still hold open the possibility of these things, even if I don't agree with a lot of them, right? A lot of these things I am in direct disagreement with. If you are basing anything at all upon Genesis or Jasher or the Book of Enoch, it's going to cause serious problems with reliability because those three uh, texts are unreliable. They are not accurate representatives of history in the way that it is, right? It is somebody's speculation about what history was for Genesis. Enoch is a wild, fantastical tale about demons and angels for the most part. And then Jasher, as we are doing a live study, Jasher is just apologetics. It was written way after this, right? Or this, way after Genesis, with the full intention of apologizing for Genesis. So all three of those books are completely discredited in my viewpoint. I mean, they may contain some truth, but even the truth that they contain has to be verified elsewhere because they contain things that are verifiably untrue. If your work contains something that is verifiably untrue, you either change the work or you get dismissed as being unreliable. Hopefully that clears up some stuff, right? I am not opposed to a one-on-one conversation in real time in a live format, but I like to know the footing before I get into a fight, right? Not that it's a fight, but you have to know the ground, right? You have to know what you are dealing with. And I'm not trying to go and be like, you believe this thing when that's not evident from the text. And that is the problem that we're facing here, is because this text is not necessarily what Jason believes anymore. But this is what is recorded as the viewpoint. And that is why we are looking at it in that particular way. He may not believe all of these things in exactly this way anymore, but they are presented here in that way. And so we will address them in that way, right? As if he believes this is true, whether or not he really does anymore or not, right? I had the comment, Jason doesn't believe in a deluge. Well, this text proves that wrong. It may be that his viewpoint has changed since this text, but this text quite explicitly says that there is a worldwide deluge coming in 670 years from the point that we are right now. And so let's dive in and continue our exploration of the Archaix Chronicon. We are up to 2909 BC, 986 Annus Mundi, 5014 before Armageddon. 670 before the flood, 2330 Anunnaki chronology, 1100 Phoenix chronology, 1130 orbital chronology. That's 1400 Phoenix chronology. I don't know if I said that right. 762 Jewish calendar, 204 Mayan calendar. And once again, some of these numbers have absolute meaning and some of these numbers have relative meaning. Strange dreams and omens afflict the kings and princes and priests, and Enoch assembles all of them. A remarkable fact preserved also in Coptic records preserved by Arab scholars. What is that footnote? I mean, we just did Jasher 3 yesterday, right? We did 2 and 3 yesterday. Again, you just simply cannot use Jasher as a reference. Now, origin and significance of the Great Pyramids may be something we need to check out, right? If there are Coptic records of this thing, which is a separate verifiable, right? If there are two instances of the same story contemporaneously being spoken or recorded, then that is going to lend a little bit more credence to the argument being made. And so it is entirely possible that there is going to be some kind of corroboration in that particular footnote. But again, this first footnote is simply useless. It is concluded in a council that a terrible disaster is going to come upon all mankind, and Enoch secludes himself for many days until God reveals to him divine instructions on an architectural project. Enoch is to pass on the plans for his people to build immense constructions of stone at Axuzon, Giza, at the middle of the earth. Enoch passes on these instructions. Enoch reveals that he is to depart, that he will be seen on earth no more, and the masses grieve. Calendrically, this is a revealing year. As 762 of the Jewish calendar, we see here a change of dynasty. As in 762, with the Abbasid dynasty's move to Baghdad in Babylon, this sum, 762, will denote this many times throughout history. The Sumerian king lists specifically record that this date, 670 years before the flood, was the start date of Alulim, the first of the Anunnaki dynasty to rule over the earth. The title, Alulim, denotes a female demon, Alu. This further explains the paradox of the 8 and 7 kings of the Anunnaki. Popular, known throughout hundreds of ancient references, they are called the 7 kings, powerful Anunnaki rulers over mankind, but the list always have an 8th title. That is because 8 is a more important number than 7. Alulim reigns for 28,800 shars, evenings and mornings, days. I have not seen corroborating evidence that a shar is actually a day. I have seen claims that you believe this to be so, but I haven't seen the backing up evidence of that particular claim. I mean, it could be true, it could be weeks, it could be months. The turning of the stars is not necessarily one day. Earth's first 70 years of rule over the Canaanites and their kingdoms, as well as the Nephilim nations and giants, is insignificant until 2839 BC. The latter 10 years of her reign is over even the unwilling Sethite kingdoms, formerly under Enoch. She rules from a pre flood city, Eridu, erected by Irad, son of Cain. This year is 204 years of the Mayan calendar, which counts down to a total Anunnaki invasion in 2046 and global disaster, like their first appearance in 3439 BC, killing a third of mankind. This 204 years is 2448 months. Again, 2448, the Egyptian number denoting cataclysm. It will be shown in this research that the sum of 670 years concerns empires and their beginnings and endings. This Anunnaki matriarch initiates her rule 670 years before the deluge. I keep seeing this phrase, right? It will be shown in this research, and yet it is repeatedly not. Footnotes 1, Jasher 310, 2, Origin and Significance of the Great Pyramid 104, Appendix. 2908 BC, 987 Annus Mundi, 5013 years before Armageddon, 696 before the flood, 2331 in Anunnaki chronology, 1401 in Phoenix chronology, and 1131 in orbital chronology. This is the 243rd year of Enoch's empire, exactly 300 years, 108,000 days, since we had begun rule over the Sethites. Enoch goes to a place called Achuzon, Giza, where he is taken up into the sky before 800,000 people. That is a completely separate account than is recorded in Genesis. It is said that Enoch never died and that he would return to the earth in the last days to execute a prophetic ministry against the watchers during the apocalypse. As far as I am aware, the only reference to that in particular is going to be Revelation. Right? The footnote says Genesis 5:23 to 24. That is saying that he was taken up. It is not saying that he will return. And the secrets of Enoch, what is this? This is, I don't even know what number that is. That's a 10, and L is a 20. So, no, an L is a 50. So 44? Is that what it is? Enoch 44? Jasher 3:31 to 32, which again is useless. And 2, Secrets of Enoch. All right, so it is also declared that Enoch departed in the same hour and day that he was born, 365 years earlier. That's not an allegory at all. There's no way possible that it is an allegory, that this perfectly bookends, right? Perfectly bookends into sacred geometry, even. There's absolutely, completely coincidental that he lived 365 years to the day. Are you? Yeah, okay. Okay. The people assembled, and the words and instructions of Enoch were read aloud. The divine instructions they were to follow in building a gigantic monumental complex at the same time. As the Anunnaki had determined to rule over men on earth, the Creator took Enoch into heaven to rule the faithful Anunnaki, angels that had kept their divine estates, because that's exactly what needed to happen, right? Some earthly ruler had to go up and take up precedence over the faithful Anunnaki. That's exactly what God needed to happen. It wasn't enough that God was in charge, right? It's not enough that God, he's too busy. He can't keep up. He's overwhelmed. And so he has to delegate to a human being the governance of these Anunnaki. That's something that absolutely happened. 2905 BC, 990 Annus Mundi, 5010 years before Armageddon, 666 before the flood, 2334 Anunnaki chronology, 1404 Phoenix chronology, 1134 orbital chronology, 534 descent of the Watchers, 208 in the Mayan calendar. Uh, this number is significant. Do you know why it's significant? It's not why you think. Who was the king that was, whose number that is? Do you know whose number that is? 666 is the number of Solomon. Isn't that interesting? And again, I don't believe that Solomon ever actually existed. The Sethite architects surveyed the Giza Plateau area and began quarrying stone from many miles away, and the builders began the altar of God. As the plateau was leveled, an elaborate and deep tunnel system with galleries of rock and subterranean chambers was dug out. This is something, right? There is absolutely, beyond any shadow of a doubt, many different chambers in the Giza Plateau. Not all of them are underneath the pyramid. Some of them extend out quite extensively. There was at one point in time a labyrinth, which was very extensive. And so there are all kinds of things dug out. It doesn't necessarily have to be the new stuff that we are coming to an understanding of. I know that some people find that to be complete bullshit. I'm ambivalent, right? It is entirely possible that it is there. It is entirely possible that it is not. And until somebody investigates with some kind of verifiable proof positive, then it's up for speculation, and I don't care either way. Right? We do know that there are chambers. That is a real thing. It is entirely possible that it extends deep into the earth. We, again, don't have full information about many things. And it is possible that, much like Kuyu, there were tunnels built far down into the earth, right? And Kuyu is not isolated. There are many of those around from the same time period, almost as if they were anticipating some kind of a disaster. And so that to me explains a lot of things. The whole Gobekli Tepe thing. I don't know about the intentional filling in, right? That is something that is speculated, but we do know this, right? The volume of gravel, which is basically what's there, right? It is sand and gravel. If that volume of gravel had descended from the heavens with any velocity, which it would have had, and heat, then most of the monuments which it encapsulates would indeed be broken. Now, that is the same effect that hail would have on a windshield, right? One piece of hail is not really going to hurt a whole lot. It might, but not necessarily. 10,000 pieces of hail is definitely going to cause some damage, and structural damage is a real thing. Stone, while very resilient, can be damaged, particularly if it is narrowed, right? If you are talking about proportionality, where the length is longer than the width, then there is going to be a higher propensity for breakage along the width. These are things that we can very well accurately predict. This gravel level that is in there, it's high, right? There would have to be a very significant understanding for you to want to fill that in voluntarily. There would have to be an enormous driver behind the society doing so, and it is possible that they did so deliberately. It is equally possible that it was not a deliberate action at all and was some, as of yet, undetermined force. It could have been from the sky. I find it unlikely because of the preservation of the monuments, right? If you have a 10-foot stone, it's going to take an awful lot to cover that up. But again, all of that is speculation. The deep chambers underneath Giza, that is speculation. But there are absolutely chambers, right? This says deep tunnel systems. You have to kind of lean into the other understanding, the one that is currently unfolding, to get deep out of the chambers. They're not all that deep. Most of them are less than 20 feet. That's not going to be considered deep. I mean, there is some inside of the Giza Plateau, right? The descending chamber goes into the the understructure, and that goes pretty deep. But that is apparently mostly a normal or a natural formation that was tunneled into. It is entirely possible that that chasm that's somebody deliberately filled, right? That is another monumental effort for some reason. They deliberately filled in this particular area. When it was done, who knows? But it is something that was done. And so that could be the entranceway into those things that they are discovering through the LiDAR. Now, I do not dismiss the ability of LiDAR to do things because, electromagnetics is the foundationals for everything, and that kind of measures electromagnetics. And so it is entirely possible that it is correct. But again, without corroborating evidence, I'm simply ambivalent. I don't care either way. Back to the text. The four cornerstones were laid first, and the perimeter of the Great Pyramid was laid first, and the erection of the monument was from the four corners up and inward. That is possible, but not even likely. Right? If you have never been involved in an extensive construction effort, right? I mean, it is possible that you go and you find your exact measurements and you place your stones there and then you work from there, right? But what is most likely to happen, right? You find the corner that you wish to begin with. And from that corner, you begin your proceedings, right? You lay out your row of bricks or rocks or stones or whatever it happens to be in these two directions first, right? And then you go the distance that you want to go, and then you square it off and you go and you make them connect. That is a much more likely scenario, but again, then when nobody was there, right? We don't have records at all of the pyramid being built that are reliable in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. Again, Jasher is not a good reference for anything. And so this is just speculation, right? Having worked construction, I can tell you that it is least likely to do it this way, but I haven't done monumental stonework construction, so maybe they did it that way for reasons undetermined due to that. Um, the beginning of a construction from a distances appeared like four leaning towers of stone, several courses high, with the center of the pyramid at all time the construction of the lowest. Wait, the beginning of construction from distance appeared like four leaning towers of stone, several courses high. Absolutely not, however. This I can pretty emphatically state upon because you might be able to lay the four corners and match up. That is possible. It is more difficult, but it is a possibility. But what is not going to happen is that you're going to meet underneath the overhang the various courses in between. That's just simply going to be damn near impossible dealing with bricks, right? Like a regular, normal 1 foot long brick or 10 inches. I think they're 10 inches, but like that's going to be extremely difficult to match up correctly in that instance, right? You done built the four corners up and now you're meeting the underside. Yeah, no, didn't happen in that way. I will be fairly firm on that. And in addition to that, right, we have new evidence, we have new understandings, and it is almost a guarantee. And when I say almost a guarantee, it is really close to it that there were three phases of construction for the pyramids. It began most likely with a step pyramid, which was then corrected into a larger pyramid, which was then brought into the current iteration. That's going to throw a severe kink into this understanding because if they started in the middle, then they absolutely did not start on the four corners, and they probably started in the middle. And again, probably means almost certainly. The 51 to 52 degree angle sloping faces were carefully employed during the erection of more and more courses added from the perimeters inward. Then again, that is just a very, very hard way to do that. As the structure was built in an elevation, the central portion remained like a cube, much lower than the four corners of the monument. This project will require 90 years, 1,080 months to complete in 2815, and its precision to the thousandths of an inch is by far more superior to structures erected by men in the 21st century. The distribution of the interior passages and chambers had long baffled researchers. However, the knowledgeable interpreter can read the measurements of the monuments as a great geometrical timeline of world history immortalized in stone. This is the subject of chronotecture. This was originally theorized as early as 1859 AD and popularized from 1860 to 1924. But because these researchers were deficient, an accurate chronology of history, their exhibition of the theory fell short before the critics. The pyramid inch, based upon the velocity of the Earth around the Sun, is the basis for the length of measurement used in planning out the architecture of the Great Pyramid. That is possible, right? There is reasons to believe that that might be true, but there is no reason to believe that it absolutely is true, right? We have to maintain speculation in the area in which it belongs, and this is definitely one of them. I mean, we have seen several instances in this document where the pyramid inch has been referred to, but it's been referred to kind of haphazardly. It represents this in this one particular chronological system, but it represents something completely different in another chronological system, neither one of which is definite. Right? There is no, there will be an Armageddon on this date. Right? You can say it all that you want to, but until that day pops up, I'm going to treat you exactly like I treat everybody else that says it. Right? Now, we can speculate about it. We can say that I think that it will happen in about 40 years. Okay, fine. That's not really setting a date, right? But if you say that it's going to be June the 2nd of 2046, we've got a problem, right? Because if it's not June the 2nd, you are wrong. Well, what are you going to do when you're wrong? You're going to push that date back because apologetics never end. Right? Apologetics just push it back farther and farther. They've been doing that at least since the first century AD, right? We were supposed to have the rapture that was going to come and bring the perfection of man onto earth at the death of Christ. And they were fully expecting that to happen within their lifetimes. And it didn't. So it gets pushed back a little bit farther, and then it gets pushed back a little bit farther. And now here we are, 2026 years later, and people are still expecting it, even though there is no reason to. Really, if you read the book, there's really no reason to believe that there is a rapture, right? There is no reason to believe that there will be some kind of intervention that will pull you out of a cataclysm. That's not even the history of God. He has never done that once, right? Every single instance of where somebody was in something that required them to have faith, they didn't get pulled out of it, right? Like they got thrown into it more and more. It is ridiculous to think that you will be saved simply because you want to. Um, so yeah, and so there may be some valid reason to believe that the pyramid inch has something to do with chronology, but it is not evident from this text for absolutely sure. It might be in chronotexture. Maybe we do that one next. Y'all want to see that one next? Let me know in the comments. I'll do it whether you say so or not, but I would be interested if you were interested. In this year, the Sphinx is carved out of the solid limestone of the Giza Plateau. The statue is the largest to survive the ancient world and is a lithic prophecy of the diligent watchers of Eden, Sphinx, which is a composite symbol for the four corners of heaven, the zodiacal bull, eagle, man, lion, eagle, man. That is entirely an assumption. There is no reason to believe that, right? The lithic prophecy of the diligent watcher of Eden. What is that? What is this prophecy? I don't have a prophecy for a diligent. Is this the angel with the flaming sword? Well, that is most definitely not what is represented by the Sphinx. There is no sword at all, much less a flaming one. And you're assuming that it is the zodiacal bull, lion, eagle, and man, right? That is an assumption that you're making with no real reason whatsoever, right? And what is the eagle in the zodiac? What's the eagle? And so what is even going on there? What is this lithic prophecy? Right? I don't know what that is. The diligent watcher of Eden would be the angels guarding the gate, right, with a flaming sword. And it is a composite symbol, even though there is no representative of a bull, eagle, or man evident, and there is only a little bit of a representative of a lion, right? You can make the extrapolation that the feet represent that. That's the only thing, right? And the man part of it, the head, is absolutely a later construct. It was not the original intention of that. We don't know what the original intention was. It could have been a lion. It could have been some hybrid. Right? It could be something else, but we don't know. Maintaining that understanding that we don't know is important. The zodiacal bull, lion, eagle, and man that protects the sacred tree, the pillar of knowledge that mankind lost in 3895 BC, but would regain in 2106 AD. What is this pillar of knowledge? What is the pillar of knowledge? Is this a reference to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Because that is not a one-on-one comparison. I am unaware, right? Then it could be that there is some textual source for this. It is not given as a footnote, but it is possible that it is there, right? That there is some correlation between the tree of knowledge and the pillar of knowledge. Now, this can tie into Masonics, right? Masonics got Boaz and Yaquin, which is intelligence and wisdom, and that might be, but the Masons don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing at all. And that is evident from the Masons, right? We did that. We walked through their own writings, not all of them. I don't claim to talk for all, but the writings that we went through, yeah, no, they don't know what they're doing. In fact, it's ill-advised to do the things that they do. And so what is this pillar? Where did this pillar of knowledge that mankind lost, right? Not was banished from, not was removed from access to, but lost. And what would it gain in 2106 AD? Conveniently well beyond the lifespan of anyone alive today. Well, I don't know. You could be born today and you might see that. Frederick Haberman, in Tracing Our Ancestors, wrote that the Sphinx is the most important symbol of Eden that we have left, or rather constitutes a link between paradise lost and paradise regained. For this Sphinx, with the body of the lion and the head of a woman, symbolizes nothing less than that the prophecy that form, the seed of the woman shall come the lion of the tribe of Judah to crush the head of the serpent. And for 55, actually 58 centuries, the Sphinx has been watching for him. Really? 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 All right, so we've already done Genesis, right? We've already talked about Genesis quite extensively, and Genesis is no reference point. Genesis is at best a amalgamation of various vocal histories from a variety of tribes in order to create a narrative for this one that you are trying to create from the variety of tribes. That is the most likely explanation. If that is confusing to you, The House Built Upon Shifting Sands has a whole chapter devoted to that, and it will lay it out for you fairly well. It's available for free. You don't have to buy it. Uh, and so, on the face, this prophecy is a not, right? There is no prophecy of this happening. It's not real. The seed of the woman shall come, the lion of the tribe of Judah. And for 55 centuries, the Sphinx has been watching for him. The early Egyptians of Thebes held traditions that the Sphinx had the body of a lion and a woman's head with eagle's wings. There is no evidence of wings, as far as I am aware, either. This woman's head, that is a new one for me as well. And that is entirely possible. It would absolutely have been hidden in the annals of time if it was actually a woman's head. Plutarch wrote that the Sphinx one had wings of multicolored hue. There is a deeper connection between the Sphinx and the Genesis narrative. And before we get too far, right? This right here, as an explanation for the Sphinx, is simply trying to fit into your biblical narrative, something that exists outside of your biblical narrative. There is no reason to believe in any way, shape, or form whatsoever that at any point in time, the Israelites or any derivative they came from or went into were in charge in Egypt at all. There is a record of some Israelites attempting to invade Egypt and being repelled from Egypt. That was not the Exodus. I know that that is one of the chronological points that is leaned on fairly heavily. It is not that, right? It is quite explicit from the source material that these were invaders and that they were not allowed into the country, right? They were repelled before the river. They didn't make it into. They were repelled before they actually achieved anything. And that is the only reference of any Hebrews, as far as I am aware, actually attempting to go into Egypt. There is no Moses in Egyptian writings and in anything that is existent from the time of when he would be there. There is zero evidence that he ever existed. The only evidence that Moses ever existed comes from the Old Testament. That is it. There is nothing outside of that. Nothing. At best, Moses was a Midianite who led the Midianites into Egypt, not the Israelites from the north, but the Midianites from the south, right around the region of the Red Sea. And that they were a raiding party that went into Egypt and Pharaoh came to meet them and then they retreated. And that's when they went across the Red Sea and defeated Pharaoh. But all of that, right? There is no firm understanding of that. There is no verifiable outside sources of any of that happening in the way that it is described in the book, right? Genesis, Exodus, none of that is verifiably true in any way. There are parts of it that are historically accurate because you are writing something for these people. You need to include some historically accurate things, but simply because it has been there for a while doesn't make it real. Because it was written doesn't make it real, right? Just because people believe it doesn't make it real. It takes being able to verify things to make it real. And Genesis simply doesn't have anything really verifiable at all. The early Egyptians of Thebes held traditions that the Sphinx had the body of a lion and a woman's head with eagle's wings. Plutarch wrote that the Sphinx had wings of multicolored hue. There is a deeper connection between the Sphinx and the Genesis narrative. Planet Phoenix appeared as a fiery flaming sword that in Genesis was the weapon of the Watcher, preventing mankind from regaining access to the walled enclosure, Eden. That is an accurate representative of what Genesis states, right? There was an entity placed at the gates of Eden with a flaming sword that kept you away. That has nothing to do with the Sphinx. This guardian is immortalized as the Sphinx, protecting the Great Pyramid site, ever facing east. That is an assumption that you are making. That is not a verifiable fact. Remarkably, the Sphinx title derives from the same root from which Phoenix derives, so that Sphinx is actually the same word as Sphinx or Sphinx. Remember the Gnostic text that declared that Phoenix was a witness against the angels. The dimensions of the Sphinx is 240 feet long with two outstretched limbs at a height of 66 feet. Exhibits an architectural awareness of the entire length of the Anunnaki chronology of 7,344 years, from 5,239 BC to 2106 AD, when the chief cornerstone returns. The stone the builders rejected. And see, this is all playing into a biblical narrative, right? That's what this is. This is really a version of apologetics as well. Right? This is playing into somebody wants to believe that there will be a return of this person who died for your sins, even though all of that is ridiculous, right? There has been no point in history when killing something else absolved you from your wrongdoings. That is a fallacy built upon fallacy, built upon fallacy, built upon misunderstanding entirely. There has never been a single point in history where killing anything was the forgiveness for your sins. Never a goat, never a cow, never a bird, never a person. That has never been a real thing. It has always been a belief and not even a good one. The best that you can possibly attribute to the blood sacrifice is that it was a pocketbook hit, just like a speeding ticket, right? It is a way to discourage you from doing the wrong thing because it has a monetary value to you. You were planning on using that for something else, whether it was food or to sell for possessions. You were planning on using that particular animal. And because you messed up, now you don't get to. It's a pocketbook hit. It never absolved you from doing the wrong thing. It was never you can kill somebody, kill a goat, and you're good. That was never a thing. It was never a thing you can steal from somebody, kill a goat, and you're good. That was never a thing. And so, on prima facie, on the face of the matter, the salvation at the cross has to fall apart because there was never a required sacrifice. Now, Jesus may have been trying to put an end to the blood sacrifice. I will grant that from his words. But he was not trying to establish that he would be the passageway. He was showing you a way. He was telling you instructions on how to do things. And if you listen to what he said, as opposed to what Paul says or what Peter says, you might actually be okay. The orbital length of Nibiru in years, the length of the statue at 2880 inches and its height of 792 inches, 66 feet. The orbital length of Nibiru in years, we get 3672. This is precisely half of the 7,344 year timeline. The measurement of 792 in the statue's height further links it to the Anunnaki. When considering the total intended height of the Great Pyramid with that of the Sphinx, a startling fact emerges. Once the top stone is laid upon the Great Pyramid, which today is flat, the monument with its casing stones would be 5,814 inches high, and coupled with the 792-inch height of the Sphinx, we get 6606 pyramid inches. 666 and its variance is a number expressive of the idea of total authority. 2905 was exactly 666 years before the flood in 2239 BC. Now, here's a question for you. This might be true, right? Whatever, these numbers may be true, but what is the catalyst for adding these together? Why do you think that that is something that you need to do? Why not take into account all of the pyramids on the Giza Plateau and add them together? It's just the one. You're just going to take the one and add that to the Sphinx. Why? There's not really a correlation, right? The Sphinx complex is on the Giza Plateau, sure, but it's over there, right? Pyramids over here. There's a separation between them. It's not, you know, excessively long, but it's not sitting right outside the gate. Like, hey, these two things definitely go into the same addition. Right? Because you want the number to come out that way? Well, in order to make that happen, you've got to invent a new measurement. It is possible that there will never be a capstone. There is possible that there was a capstone and it wasn't perfect. It is possible that a wide degree of things happen, right? This could be exactly correct and it could be exactly not correct. We don't know, right? And if you are going to randomly make math happen, well, there needs to be a reason for it, right? It could be that you do need to add up the height of the main pyramid and the height of the Sphinx, but why not take into account the other two pyramids on the same plateau? It should add all of them up. Well, what number do you get if you add this pyramid, this pyramid, this pyramid, and the Giza Plateau? Well, do you have to take into account the subterranean chambers? Right? Is it just from the base or does it extend into the subterranean areas? Right? Are you measuring from that base all the way to the top? What is your measurement? Layers. Layers of problems with this. In this year of 2905 BC, the foundation of the pyramid was laid, this being 990 Annus Mundi. This year was 330 times 3, again, a complete random assignment of numbers. In Hebrew, the gematria for to make atonement is 330, and anything multiplied by 3 in numerology represents totality of fulfillment. Atonement requires an altar, as will be seen in 2815. The Great Pyramid is the altar of Adam, or more precisely, the altar of man. This year is 60 years after Adam died. Footnotes: 1. Tracing our ancestors 63. 2. The Greek myths 372. 3. Return of the serpents of wisdom 329. 2870 BC 1025 Annus Mundi. The Egyptian Coptic records indicate that in the year 498 BC, golden tablets were interpreted that conveyed a history of the Great Pyramid with a description of its origin and purpose that counted back in time to the year 2870 BC. The knowledge upon the golden tablets was supposed to have been copied from off the surfaces of the Great Pyramid. This Coptic chronology is fairly accurate, as this was the 35th year of pyramid construction at Giza, c. 498 BC. Maybe the footnote to this reference material is included there, but it is definitely not included here. 2853 BC, 1042 Annus Mundi. 4958 before Armageddon, 614 before the flood, 2386 Anunnaki chronology, 1456 Phoenix chronology, 1186 orbital chronology, 520 in the Olmec calendar, and 260 in the Mayan. Seth died in the 52nd year of construction in the Giza site at 912 years old. As chief engineer and firstborn carrier of the Masonic bloodline, patriarch of the Sethites, he was buried somewhere at Giza. Wouldn't Adam be? Well, I guess Adam wasn't born, huh? 2 calendrical markers align perfectly with this 52nd year of pyramid construction. This was the year 520 of the Olmec calendar, or 52 times 10, and the year 260 of the Mayan calendar, or 52 times 5. Footnotes: 1. Genesis 5:8. 2852 BC, 1043 Annus Mundi. An ancient Chinese prophet in this year taught the people writing. This is of particular interest because it was at this time that the lower multi-ton white limestone casing blocks were being prepared and dressed, with writings being placed upon them during pyramid construction. These knowledges were written by Enoch. Footnote: the antediluvian world, 208. I am unaware, right? This is one of those things that I don't know. There are several of the casing stones still existent upon the plateau. I am unaware that they were written upon. And I am fairly positive that they were polished, that they were flat and smooth and reflective even, but I don't have any knowledge of them ever being referred to as being writing. Inside, yeah, there's plenty of writing inside, but I don't know about on the outside. And I don't know. So 2844 BC, the golden tablets translated for King Philippus in 498 BC provided a second chronology concerning the construction of the Great Pyramid, dating the construction at 946 prior to the arrival of the sons of Ham, Kim, into Egypt after the deluge. This migration took place in 1898 BC, 1997 Annus Mundi, years after the catastrophe remembered as the Babel Dispersion. This is the 61st year of construction at Giza. Footnote 1. The origin and significance of the Great Pyramid, 112 to 114. We'll do, I guess, one more, and this next one looks big. So 2843 BC, 1052 Annus Mundi, 4948 before Armageddon, 604 before the flood, 2396 Anunnaki chronology, 1466 Phoenix chronology, 1196 orbital chronology, 828 Jewish chronology, 596 Descent of the Watchers, 270 in the Mayan calendar, and 260 in the Vedic. Egyptian Coptic records date the construction of the Great Pyramid in this year, which was indeed in the 62nd year of construction. Well, that is directly contradictory to itself, right? It's either the 62nd year of construction or it's the date of construction. The calendars of this year are intriguing. Well, that's a word for confusing. As 828 of the Jewish calendar, this was 6 Phoenix orbits of 138 years each, or 2 cursed Earth periods, 414 plus 414. It was 270 of the Mayan calendar, or 3240 months, 1080 times 3, and 260 of the Vedic calendar, being 52 times 5. The Vedic relating to the Anunnaki dynasty. This Anunnaki dynasty began in 2909 BC, 66 years before this date, or 792 months. And we're going to go ahead and let this be the end of this particular study, right? I like to keep them around an hour because that is easily consumable by people. If it was up to me, I would run through it all in one day, but nobody would watch it because it would be 20 hours long. And so we're just over halfway. We'll probably be another week here before we move on to the next whatever it is. It may wind up being the chronotecture. That is interesting. We'll see how that works out. I don't know where we're going next entirely, but it's probably going to be something related to this. Now, one of them, well, let me do this right now. Hopefully, I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat difficult topics. I understand that I hold some unconventional beliefs, and I do have a tendency to step on toes when I believe those. It is not intentional, but it is not something that I apologize for. I'm just trying to find the truth, right? It doesn't matter to me what it is, as long as it is, right? As long as we find out what the truth is, that's fine. My major contention with this work is that it is not sufficient, right? It is laying out some data points. I will grant that, and they may even be verifiable, but it is not obvious from the text that they are. Some of these footnotes are verifiably untrue, right? Again, Genesis, the book of Enoch or Jasher, no, just not going to work. Exodus, no, not going to work. Simply because I've already done the work on those and I know that that's not right. Like, I know that that's not right. On a foundational level, that is incorrect on a variety of reasons. I have 43 points of contention with the Holy Bible. I have laid them out with my arguments in printed text and in the format that I'm doing right here. I went through the Bible, 161 videos, plus 2 of me explaining what I found. All of that is me doing the work, right? When I made my book, I've got footnotes that tell you, hey, and here's the thing about my footnotes, all of them are confirmations of things that I already knew, right? The things that I discovered on my own, and I went looking for confirmation. So, confirmation bias in my own work, yes, but they are other people's independent works that corroborate directly to whatever it is that I am referencing to, right? The hard math stuff correlates directly into meditative practices where it is referenced. That is somebody else doing the work that I have found the results for, and their results coincide with mine in a way that is enough for me to use them as a verifiably reliable source. Right now, whether they are perfectly right or not, that is not, it is my concern. Right. There is nothing glaringly obvious in any of my footnotes that is going to lead you away. Right? But some of them are Genesis, right? We can't talk about the book of Genesis without referring to Genesis, but Genesis disqualifies itself several times when you read through it. And that is a big problem. Most of this is not, it's not verified, right? Just because it has been written for a long time doesn't make it true. Fiction existed back then as well, and as did speculation. The book of Genesis is speculation. It is speculation upon the foundation of the earth and where people came from and the histories that may or may not be real. And there is no real reason to believe that there ever was a Tower of Babel. There really isn't. There is no real reason to believe that there was an expulsion from the garden in the way that it is given. There's not. And it doesn't even make sense that it would be. There are internal inconsistencies in the book of Genesis. And so, because it is verifiably untrue in a multitude of ways, even the things that are verifiably true have to be verified from somewhere else because it's a work of fiction, right? London is in Harry Potter, That doesn't make Harry Potter true. Just because it has a reference to a real place, even with real people and real things, right? Just because there is a reference in a work does not make the work real. But speculatively, right? Genesis is speculation. This is how we think as a collective. This isn't even an individual effort how the universe was formed. It is an amalgamation of creation stories from a variety of people, some of them stolen outright. The flood story was stolen. That was not an original biblical narrative. It was taken from other people, and that is fairly close to verifiable. Now, I don't do the research, right? I don't do the on the ground check this source, this source, this source, this source with the direct translations coming from me. I don't do that. I have to trust that the people who are interpreting things are doing it at least accurately. I will check several sources if there is discontent between them. But your own work has to be consistent within itself. I mean, if there is something that directly contradicts your belief in your sayings, then it is a problem for you. You cannot believe that the sky is fake, that it is a projection of a simulation and that you don't actually have it. There's nothing that can pass through it, that it summons things. And at the same time, hold that space is real and that things are out there and moving and orbiting and that they affect the earth. Like here's a point, and this is where I'll wrap it up. The vapor canopy is entirely likely. You want to know why is it entirely likely? Because space is not empty. It is not. It is not a vacuum. It's close, but it's not. It is stretched really thin between the atoms, but it is not a vacuum. There are things out there. There are gases, pockets of clouds, and we just recently exited one. In my lifetime, I am 48. I'll make 49 this year, but 48, right? And in my lifetime, I remember a yellow sun. I remember the sun being yellow, except when it was all the way at the very top. From like 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock, it was kind of white. And then it went back to yellow until it turned to orange and red. You want to know why it is different now? And yes, it is different now. The sun is hitting different than it did because we no longer have interference between us and the sun. Our solar system was passing through a gas cloud, it was trackable, and now we're not. We have exited it. And so we receive more sunlight. That is a change in perception from things outside of us. But that exact same phenomenon can explain the vapor canopy, right? If we were in an ultra dense condensation of vapor in space, that explains a vapor canopy. Now, there are other explanations as well. That is just one explanation, but that explanation depends entirely upon there being space. Depends entirely upon it not being a firmament upon which we are projecting things. The projection's not creating this, right? That is the most fantastical part of the simulation theory, right? Not that there's a dome, but that the dome actually creates things. On the catastrophic level, you know how hard it is to materialize? Like, for real. But it makes much more sense if there's not a firmament and we are passing through space and space is not entirely empty, right? And we know that it's not. We know that there are gas clouds way out there. We just have a hard time accepting that they're here too, right? But they are. We can pass through an ammonia cloud right now and just wipe out the entirety of the planet. Everything on Earth would die if we did that. I mean, these are things that are real. They exist out there. There are clouds of things, and it could be that there was a cloud of water vapor and we passed through it. There's another alternative theory about sky water bringing us the flood. That's possible. That could be part of that memory that we as a collective species hold because there is a story, but we don't know the details. We can speculate about them. That's what we did in Genesis. That's what we do in Enoch, not really Jasher, right? Jasher is not contemporaneous with Genesis at all. It is at best is hard. It was translated in the 1600s from some scrolls that disappeared. Well, we have several instances of something like that happening elsewhere, right? We have John Smith and the Mormons had golden tablets that just disappeared. I wonder where he could have got that If you are really receiving something from God, it's going to be verifiable. Other people are going to be able to do it. My book, The Series of Unconventional Beliefs, details how I use the Holy Spirit to heal myself. And as far as I know, it is repeatable by anyone, right? Now, you need to make damn good and sure that you know the rules before you play the game. And there are rules that you are unfamiliar with if you have not read through my book or watched my videos. I know that sounds awfully heady, but it is true. I mean, the understanding that we had did not work. We are receiving a new understanding, and I am part of that, but I don't claim to be all of it. Right? I am not super special guy. I am just here discerning things, reading through and trying to deduce and use logic to understand. Not my beliefs. My beliefs are in a whole different place. To use what we know to be true, to discern what might be true in things that we speculate about. This is all speculation. There is, as far as I've seen so far, no corroborative evidence, right? We don't have this destruction happened on this day, right? We have, there's a flood coming in 600 years. That's on here, but we have Armageddon coming in 5,000 years. That's on here, but we don't have the 138 years, right? The cycle. This particular region disappeared, right? This region, not a city. City is not going to be big enough for this type of an event, right? It has to be at least state sized, at least country sized, at least a significant amount of humanity affected for it to be something divine in that way, right? It is entirely possible that there is a disaster cycle. It can be the one that I like. It can be the one that Jason likes. It can be the one that neither one of us have heard of. It can be that there are signs and wonders that appear in the sky. There is significant reason to believe that. But there is not really any chronological reason to believe that this is a cycle. You can correlate all kinds of things, right? You can look. We just had this hurricane that just happened. It was last year. Happened in the North Carolina, Tennessee region, right? You can look at that as part of this cycle. And if you track back 138 years, I'm sure you can find another disaster along the same scope for the same thing. But that doesn't mean that it is the same thing, right? It doesn't mean that there was this sign in the sky that showed for both of them. You might only show for one of them. It is an assumption that we're making, and we do not have the records, right? Now, it may be that there is some record. I keep getting told that. I keep hearing that in comments, but as of yet, that has not been evident in this text. It hasn't. There have been speculations, but it's not even really provable things that have happened. And so I have to assume that it's speculative. But that's where I'm going to leave this one. So hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment. If you like what I'm doing, let me know down below. Give me a like, a share, a follow, throw me a comment. Whether you agree or disagree with anything that is stated, put it in the box. And if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If you really like what I'm doing over here, hit me with that super thanks. Consider joining for a membership, picking up a copy of any of my books, or reaching out to me through any of the links provided down below. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pittstake. Peace.